pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Alderman Bowman.
Present.
Alderman Milner.
Present.
Alderman Turner.
Present.
Alderman Bockelman.
Here.
Alderman Dickerson.
Here.
Alderman Levinson.
Here.
Alderman Reese.
Present.
Alderman Long.
Here.
Mayor Hassel.
Here, and we do have a quorum. Good evening, everyone. We do not have any ceremonial matters tonight, so at this time I'll open the floor to public participation. Anybody who has anything to bring before this board that is not on our already scheduled agenda, please feel free to step forward at this time.
I do, Mayor.
All right, sir.
First time I've saddled up to this podium for almost 8
Did
years.
you give Randy your?
Oh.
He probably knows your name, but he might need your address.
You'll get to it. Hang on.
All right.
This is my first rodeo.
Oh, that's all right. Hey, that's good.
I just didn't want you to get in trouble.
Mayor Hassick, members of the board, thank you for allowing me this time to speak to you. For those of you who do not know, my name is Bob Serber. My wife and I live at 3155 Prairie View Drive here in Harrisonville, Missouri. I worked for the city of Harrisonville for 36 years. Started here in July 1974, promoted to water and sewer superintendent in January 1986, and public works director in 2000, and retired in July of 2010. So 36 years of service with the city in the water and wastewater division here at the city. My wife and I attended the Missouri Auditor Nicole Galloway's report outlining numerous irregularities in the way the city handles funding. Each city department and project, as well as a host of other problems, getting things charged to the correct department. I was not surprised by these findings. This board now is responsible for making things right, to make sure expenditures are charged to the correct department and capital projects are charged appropriately. I read in the paper that the city is going to be required to treat their effluent at the main wastewater treatment plant on Clearwater Drive, and also the package plant that services only Walmart Distribution Center. It was also stated in the article, I believe 2 weeks ago in the paper, that the city was considering calculating the sewer rates for residences the same as they do for commercial. For those of you who do not know, the commercial rate is a little higher than the residential rate. So each month it's however many gallons of water you use times that rate, and that's what our commercial business pays per month. Residences, apparently you're considering doing the same thing. 1986, 85 or 86, we did plant refurb. There was a study done and so forth. And what was determined at that time was that it was more fair to our residences to do the winter average. So in other words, your usage, water usage for a resident in January and February, that average would be, you would pay that times the rate for one solid year. And next year, maybe you added a child, so your water went up, it was recalculated, or maybe you had a child that went to college, and so your usage went down. But it made it more fair for the residents in that way. The problem that I see with calculating it the way that you're proposing to do it is we were taking into consideration summertime usage, washing your car, watering your flowers, irrigating your lawn, etc., whatever you used your water for. So now you're considering charging people through the summer, whatever, the straight across the board. To me, I have to say that I think that's a terrible idea. I don't think it's fair to your residents in any way, shape, or form. Why should a resident pay for water in their irrigation when it does not hit the sanitary sewer? If it hits the sanitary sewer, absolutely, they should pay for it. But when you water your lawn, water your flowers, wash your car on Saturday morning in the driveway, it doesn't hit the sanitary sewer, and therefore, we should not be charging for that. It would be like going to Price Chopper and laying down a dozen eggs and they charged you for 2. No. You should pay for what you use. I strongly suggest that this board probably back up, secure an engineer, establish a rate, study the whole kit and caboodle, and also take into consideration the Walmart plant in your study, and figure out something that is what I think would be a more fair solution to this problem. But I would entertain any questions that you might have that maybe I'm not clear on. All right, thank you for your time. On a sad note, I'd like to tell the board, I worked with a great man. He was our street foreman for 30 years. Mr. Wilson Jones came to work for the city of Harrisonville in 1968. He retired in 1998. 30 years of service to this city. His funeral service, his visitation, will be Wednesday evening from 6 to 8 o'clock, and his funeral will be 10 o'clock Thursday morning, Atkinson Chapel here in Harrisonville. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening? Seeing no one, I will close the public participation. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. First, we have the minutes from the public hearing of April 2nd, 2018.
Move to approve.
Second?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I believe there's an error there.
All righty.
Under the call to order, it shows Marcy Milner arrived at 6:35 a.m.
Oh, AM.
She was really early.
I was there.
She should be commended for that.
That's amazing.
That's what you're pointing,
commended.
is that what you're
should.
pointing out, is we should commend her?
Absolutely. Let's give her a key to the city or something.
Okay, so that should reflect PM. Thank you, Judy.
Yes.
Good job.
Anything else? Okay, so would you like to
Motion is amended.
motion
Motion
as
is
amended?
amended.
All right.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alderman Levison, second from Alderman Dickerson to approve the minutes as amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next, we have the minutes of the regular meeting, April 2nd, 2018.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Levison. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And minutes are approved. Moving on to our agenda items. First tonight, we have the special event permit for Cox Memorial Run. There he is.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Alderman.
You were hiding somewhere.
I was down the hall. Before you tonight is the annual, I think this is the 8th annual Stacy Cox Memorial Scholarship Fund 5K run. It's scheduled for May 12th, 2018. Begins about 10 a.m. in the morning, runs down from the high school into the park, and then back to the high school to complete the 5K. We've never had any problems or any concerns with this event. The only thing they've asked for is an escort. We'll try and do that with either the reps or non-duty patrolman, so there is no cost to the city. Again, no problems with past events, so we recommend approval. Entertain any questions?
Any questions tonight?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Milner and a second from Alderman Turner. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Event is approved. Moving on, fiscal year 2017 audit report.
So as you remember from last year with the state audit, they required that we go out and get different companies for different projects. One of the things that we had not done was get a new group to do the audit for the city, and that was accomplished this year. We brought in, with the board's approval, Cochran Head Vick and Company, and they performed the audit, the in-house audit, on our financial year of 2017. Michael Keenan is here with the details. We included a PDF copy in your packet of the report. Michael can give you the details, and if you have any questions, anything you've looked over the weekend, you have any questions about, ask him about them.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Michael Keenan, and I'm a senior manager with the accounting firm of Cochran Vick and Company, here to present the results of the financial audit for the fiscal year ended December 31, 2017. As Happy mentioned, you should have received 3 documents within your packet. The larger one, once it's printed, is the comprehensive annual financial report, which is your financial statements. Those also include management discussion and analysis, the basic financial statements, notes to those financial statements, and some other supplementary information. Also included is a copy of a single audit report. The city was subject to a single audit this year due to the state revolving loan fund related to the water note. And the final document is required communications, which kind of outlines the city's responsibilities, our responsibilities, and the results of our audit. I've also handed out a little presentation. Unfortunately, I left the colored version of this in my office, so I had to make some quick copies, but this will kind of help expedite going through these reports, and then I'll certainly answer any questions that you may have. First, a little bit about Cochran Head Vick and Company on page 2. We've been serving Missouri and Kansas since 1975. Our peer review report, we've been awarded the highest rating given as a result of our peer review. What that is another CPA firm will come in and review our quality control policies and procedures and how we're adhering to professional standards. We are members of various organizations, AICPA, AICPA Government Audit Quality Center. We actually have 2 members of our government service team that review CAFRs, like you see here, for other entities. I happen to be one of those people. And we're also licensed to practice in the states of Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska. The next page is some pictures of the engagement team that was here. Unfortunately, Mr. Cochran was ill this evening. He wanted to attend, but wasn't feeling well. And then you see some of the other individuals that were here day to day interacting with your staff. So the scope of the audit is what I said, the comprehensive annual financial report, the larger document, as well as the single audit. So a little bit about our responsibilities. As the auditors, we're supposed to conduct our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as well as governmental auditing standards and uniform guidance. The uniform guidance relates to the compliance requirements over your federal awards. We're also responsible to plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatements. We're also responsible for reporting on internal controls over financial reporting and on compliance with laws and regulations. Page 6. The Auditing Standards Board of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, the AICPA, recommend that we communicate these matters to the governing board. Illegal acts, none came to our attention as a result of performing our audit procedures. Changes in significant accounting policies, there were no significant changes in accounting policies. Any difficulties or disagreements with management, we're pleased to report that we did not have any difficulties or disagreements with management, and we had full cooperation from all staff as others, as far as access to all the books and records to be able to perform our procedures. Now, a financial and compliance audit really addresses 3 basic questions. Question 1, are the financial statements free of material misstatements? The answer to that question, we have issued a unmodified opinion, also known as a clean opinion. That's the best opinion that auditors can give financial statements, that indeed they are fairly presented in all material respects. So that's a good positive sign. Our internal controls over financial reporting adequately designed and operating. We did identify a certain deficiency in internal controls that we consider to be a material weakness, and that relates to financial reporting. During our audit, we determined that there were some adjustments that were needed, that were material to the financial statements, that weren't detected by staff. We proposed those entries, and staff has made those entries, and those relate to a couple areas related to revenue recognition, one being property taxes. Recognizing the 2017 levy, if you will, those majority of those funds are going to be received in January of 18, and therefore that fiscal year. The other one relates to sales taxes. Prior to these adjustments, they were recognizing really 1 month of sales tax when it really should be a 2-month lag. For instance, when you go and buy something in December for Christmas, the city doesn't actually, it's entitled to those monies, it should recognize that as revenue, but they don't actually receive those funds until February. So that's where there's an extra month lag. And we corrected the beginning balances, so you're basically getting 12 months of revenue. It's just what 12 months you record. And so we have to report that when we come across these type of entries, we have to report that as a material weakness. And that's why you see that. The final one, did the city comply in all material respects with finance-related laws and regulation? In our opinion, on the compliance as far as the single audit, again, an unmodified opinion for your compliance. And we did not note any other non-compliance that we would be required to report to this governing body. And the management letter also includes some other suggestions for best practices and other items that we noted conducting our audit. That relates, the first one was, and management has put in their responses and corrective action plan relating to these. That was a reviewing of accounts receivable and the related allowance for doubtful accounts. As those balances have been increasing over the years, we're recommending that you look at those, possibly write off some of those as uncollectible, and look at your collection policies as far as sending those to collection agencies and really developing a formal policy related to those. Again, that's not an uncommon issue that's in smaller municipalities as well as larger, is collecting money from customers who decide they want to leave before they pay their bills. And that's just unfortunately a risk of doing business. Yeah, those amounts can be pretty significant. So we're just saying, certainly look at those and look at your policies. And I also mentioned the state audit. Again, you're well aware of those recommendations. We know that the staff has been working on implementing a great deal of those, and there's still some work to be needed as far as implementing those. One that we really looked at, and specifically identified, is looking at the administrative charges that the general fund has to the others, especially the utility funds. Really recommending that you take a look at that, possibly get a study, some outside assistance to help substantiate and evaluate the appropriateness of those charges. It could be even more versus less. Something to consider though, but that's why we pointed that out specifically. And also the last one is future accounting pronouncements. There's 5 or 6 different new accounting pronouncements. None of those are going to have a significant impact on the city of Harrisonville. There's one, the last one, GASB 87, relates to leases. And basically, if you have a number of operating leases, copiers, and some of that type of, those will be required to be reported as an asset and a deferred, kind of like debt, if you will. You do have capital assets, capital leases right now that you're recording as an obligation. So that's not going to, I don't think, have a significant change. But nevertheless, that's something that will be coming in a couple of years. Certainly CHV, Cochran Head Vic appreciates the opportunity to serve as the auditors for for the city of Harrisonville. And I want to thank Happy, also, and Marcel, who's ill today, and the staff of Harrisonville, very professional, and provided us what we needed as far as documentation, and were very responsive to our inquiries. Are there any questions that I might be able to answer?
I have one. On page 8, capital assets and debt administration, it says 61,829,643. Is that the total worth of the city of Harrisonville with their CD investments?
What page?
I believe it's on 8 of the comprehensive annual financial report.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that including the CDs that we have in different banks?
So the capital asset and debt administration, the 61 million, that's your capital assets, that's your infrastructure, your streets.
It doesn't include
That
CDs?
does not include CDs.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what I wanted.
that'd just be your capital assets, your equipment, those type buildings, land, those types of things.
Is the CDs, is the CD amount listed in here? I haven't got to read all this, of course.
There's a footnote that would list the total amount of cash and investments I think you're looking at. And that would be on page 27. We'll give you a summary, and the total cash and investments at December 31 of the city was right around 16.3 million. Made up of around 3.2 million in deposits, certificates of deposit 9.4 million, some investments around 2.4 million, some investments are held in trust related to your debt trust statements of about 1.2 million. Total cash and investments is just shy of 16.3 million. And that footnote will give you a good detail of the city's investments, the policies, the procedures related to investments, having those collateralized, what ranking they are as far as fair value. So
Okay, thank you.
those are very informative footnote.
Thank you.
I had a question on I don't know that it affects the report other than it's the statistical page, but it showed our demographic statistics, and it's pretty consistent on population, but on 2017 it jumps to 14,000. We have an increase of 4,000 people somewhere that I missed.
What page was that on?
It's on page 83 of the comprehensive report. I apologize, I should give the page number. And the personal income number shot significantly higher, so I just wondered where that possibly came from.
So I'll have to inquire from staff. The statistical portion of this back report is not audited. It's presented for supplemental information.
I guess what I was looking at is if somebody else was to pull this up and look, and, I mean, the school enrollment number went up some, but like I said, 4,000 new people, that's a big jump.
Yeah,
Like I say, it doesn't really affect the audit report itself, but I was just.
well, I think that we can look at that and have that page.
Amended or something.
Changed.
Okay, yeah, I was flipping through, kind of hitting some of the highlights, and that jumped off, I was like, oh, this is neat, and I'm like, whoa. So, okay.
I apologize for
No,
that.
that's okay.
Can you direct me to the page that will show me the liabilities for the city?
Long term? Page 35. But, you're looking for a long-term debt?
Because I haven't had a chance to digest all of this.
So looking at again, the biggest change would be the increase in the water and sewer funds of about $4 million related to the construction that's going on, and I don't recall what the balance of that bond, up to $8 million, I believe, of which you're about halfway through. And then you look at your other ones, your cops and your tax, you've made the scheduled debt service payments, and I know there's discussion of looking to refund the TIF bonds.
Refinance.
Refinance. And then you look at the bottom of that table, the component unit, the note payable.
Mhm.
So, biggest, like I said, biggest would be the addition of the 2017, and then scheduled payments on the others, including, you got compensated absences, which is your vacation, sick.
So this basically includes all the liabilities that the city has then, including any associations,
And
all the liabilities of the city are here.
yes, the long-term one, this does not include like accounts payable.
Right.
And those which are on your balance
I
sheet.
understand that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? See, I know you all got this Friday, so a lot of information to digest.
I know if you hadn't had a chance, to certainly if once you do, you can get my number or email, and I would certainly be willing to entertain any questions. I know it's a lot of information, I know we were trying to get things out quicker than they've done previously. And so that doesn't always leave a lot of
I
time.
understand.
And also, for me, it's not as easy to read these things online versus having them printed out, so I certainly understand that, and, but at all means, if you've got any questions of any type, certainly don't hesitate to shoot me an email or give me a call.
Good. I kinda like that it's broken in 3 parts here instead of online, it's all one big document, so that makes it a little easier to break it down, I guess, looking at each separate one.
It's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, they are really 3 separate documents.
Right.
Instead of putting the compliance section, which some do at the end of their CAFR, it is kind of nice to have, you know, because this is really one people like to go to first, is look at the required communications and the findings, and then look at various spots within the CAFR for their favorite fund or other information.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Well,
Let me just say that they were here for 2 weeks at the outset, 10 hours a day, 5 days, both of those weeks, just to get things going. The staff was also working on fixed assets. So it really turned into a lot of things to happen at the same time, and they were very cooperative, very helpful, open for communication, and I think it was a good transition. So we're learning how they want to get the audit done, and how we were doing our bookkeeping compared to our old auditors, so we had to make the change at the same time. But I think the transition was good, and I think you're gonna see a better report.
well, I think it's nice to have we have a fresh set of eyes, which is always, in accounting and auditing, it's always good. The more eyes that look at something, the more you can find irregularities, because not everybody sees things the same way, so.
Yes, like I said, we do have other recommendations that we give throughout the course that don't end up in here. And again, staff was very cooperative, and I really think, you know, it's kind of a learning curve the first year for staff and for us,
Right.
trying to understand the city and the processes, and, you know, so some of those things will, again, improve as we get a better understanding, then we'll look at different things. But I think overall, I was very pleased on how the audit went for this year.
Very good, very good. Well, we appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Everyone have a good evening.
Thank you. You do the same. All right. Moving on to approval of Buckle Up Phone Down program.
So MoDOT is requesting the city to become part of the Buckle Up Phone Down, BUPD program that they have. Our policy, we don't have anything specifically written, but the adopted policy for the departments is that it's the passenger that talks on the phone or does the texting. So if we have somebody out, if we're doing a water turnoff, we've got 2 people in a vehicle. We don't have the driver talking on the phone or texting. So I think we can follow this. I just wanted to get board's approval of whether we want to participate in this as others are participating, other cities, other companies. Seems like a good program, something to promote.
Did we, at committee, there was a question raised on whether the hands-free devices, does that count? I mean, obviously having somebody know if you're,
But, you know,
I mean, if it goes through your car, you can just be talking to yourself, I guess, so how would anybody know? But that was just I know that was a question raised, was,
And they didn't have a direct answer for that.
okay. I mean, it's pretty much the person driving along with the.
Don't hold it, don't text.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Alderman Reese, I assume you have something since you.
Thank you. I served on that committee, and we had discussed that. What did we decide about the police department? Because we felt like there might be a little different outlook towards that.
Yeah, and there wasn't any differentiation between the departments, but it is known that the police department is at times going to have to answer
Exactly.
the phone, and, you know, we're just gonna have to, live with that because it's safety, public safety rather than.
Yeah, can we say that? I mean, can we say everybody's gonna follow it with the exception of?
Well, if I understand the way this works, this is kind of they're wanting cities to adopt this, I mean, and they're hoping that it's not just the city staff, it's that everybody in town
Right.
pays attention, and I know that the mayor of Jefferson City brought this up at the February conference, and it's a thing they've been doing a lot of advertisement on Facebook and all. And I think it's mostly just to draw attention to how many people, I mean, I don't know if I'm sure people talking on their phone can cause wrecks, but I think it's more related to the texting. You know, it's, the temptation is there if the phone's in your hand, so they're trying to push the phone down. But I don't know that this is, we won't have any type of, there's not like a
Okay, well,
punishment or something if somebody's caught with their phone. I mean, obviously we're,
but if the idea is for everyone to follow this and all of us to be aware of the dangers of and to try to do this, I hate, how are we going to get that word out to the city, to our citizens? Are we going to put it in the paper? Are we going to, how are we gonna do that? And if we do that and we push it and we tell everybody about it and we tell them that we feel like it's important, and then our police officers are out there doing this, I really think we ought to be able to say, except for,
well, I'm sure I think it could apply to any emergency services. Again, you're back to, like you said, public safety. It's, I don't think that, if they were on the phone for personal use, it'd be one thing, but if they had in there again, who knows? But I think it's just kind of like I said, we're pledging our support, but we understand that there are times that they, like say the police or the firemen, may need to use their mobile device, and so.
Fire and EMS luckily usually have two people in a vehicle, so we don't have an issue with that department. It's the police department because they ride solo. They're by themselves.
And obviously they have radios. I mean, that's the same, to me, that's the same as talking in your phone if you gotta pull up a radio. So I think people I would think they would be understanding of
Well, yeah, I
Police
mean,
use
this
it.
has nothing to do with two-way radios.
Right. Well, like I say, it's the same concept. I mean, they've got to communicate, so.
And if we had hands-free devices for all of our vehicles, it'd be nice, but we don't have that incorporated.
okay, I've made myself known.
All right.
I have a question, Mr. Welch. It says that the driver doesn't phone or text, that the passenger does. What happens if there's only a driver in the vehicle?
At this
No
point,
passenger.
we're telling people not to use them. And if they're by themselves, they need to pull over and use the phone or text, not while they're driving individually. No.
Can that be made, or is that a policy, is that a personnel policy?
No, it will be when we get the new personnel policy adopted.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I need a motion if somebody wants this approved.
I make a motion.
Motion from Alderman Turner,
Second?
second from Alderman Bowman. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And it is approved. We will do the buckle up, phone down. Moving on, Council Bill 27.
Council Bill 27, an ordinance amending ordinance 3433 to correct a scrivener's error in the minimum monthly user fee for the first 1,000 gallons in sewer usage and establishing an effective date. First reading.
Okay, so last meeting we approved the ordinance to, which was to change the way we would handle the sewer billings. However, the actual writing that was on the document was incorrect. And I have to say, we can thank my wife for that, because she was arguing with me. She was looking at the numbers to plug it into our actual utilities and kept telling me the rate is changed, the rate is changed. I said, no, it didn't, no, it didn't, no, it didn't. So I had to take one for the team and admit that she was right and I was wrong. Anyway, I let Mr. Welch know that the numbers on the actual document, but what we discussed and what was brought up, all that was the same. So the way I understand the Scribner error is the intent and understanding of what we were passing was to not change the $10.45. It was just simply notated wrong, so that's what this is about, is correcting the writing portion. Did I say that properly?
Well, essentially, you had as I understand it, I wasn't here, that the staff gave a report with the $10 and change, $10.45 was the intent of staff that be, but they presented an ordinance that retained the $6.80. So because the ordinance was passed with the $6.80, I recommended that a new ordinance be passed to correct that if that's the board's desire. So it's up to the board which way they go at this point in time.
The 1045 is the current amount that we charge minimum for the first 1,000 gallons, and then 680 thereafter. That's what we do with commercial and residential, so that is the right amount.
Which the 68, I see the 680, it's actually 68 cents per 100 gallons, so. Anyway, so it was what was understood and intended to be done is not what was on paper, and it has to, those two items have to match, so, one way or the other. Any comments?
I'm waiting to see if they got it.
What are you waiting for us for?
I mean, this was, what was done before was passed, the board passed unanimously, so I don't know if somebody wants to open an argument about what the actual rate, I guess, if you wanted to do that, but.
Go ahead, David, say what you think.
Well, listen to what you got to say first. You've been doing about as long as I have.
Well, I don't know that I understand that things happen and mistakes get typed into the computer drastically, but I'm gonna have to have some question about what Mr. Server brought up earlier. And I think maybe we need to step back and look at this again before we go forward. Because, I stop and think when we lived in town, and I really hadn't thought about it the way he brought that up. Pardon me. Summertime, you're definitely using a whole lot more water. But if it's not going into the sewer, and yet we're going to be charging for that, that's a whole other issue.
Does everybody use more water in the summer?
Probably.
I don't.
I do.
There can be an argument that there's another way to look at it is say your bill is consistent most of the month, or most of the year, and you pay the same water rate, basically have the same water usage every month, but you live next door to a couple that has a place in Florida, and they're gone those few months of the year that average is calculated. They're not using any water, they get a very low average other than a little bit maybe the hot water heater uses. So are they paying their fair portion of the sewer because they get a rate based on 2 months of not even being here to pay for water?
Well, for people who water their lawn, for people who have a pool, for people who
Now the pool,
have,
I think you do, that one, I believe you report the amount.
Well, they can come get a hydrant meter from us,
Uh-huh.
and that will monitor the water that they put into their pool. It does not go on their water bill.
Their water
And
bill,
it'll
or
also fill the pool quite a bit quicker.
does it go on the sewer bill or just the water?
Well, it takes it off the water bill, so.
Oh,
it
it takes,
doesn't show
okay, I
up.
see, okay,
It's a separate bill for just the pool.
okay. And I'm not arguing that the usage, I'm just saying, I knew there was something for swimming pools when you brought that up, so.
That's interesting, because I had a pool for 12 years and never knew that. That would've been nice to know, but I think it brings up a very valid point, and I think as a citizen that's concerned about it and somebody who has the knowledge with the water district, I'm thinking this needs to sit for just a little while and let's do a little bit more talking about it. And I think it would be fairly easy for staff, possibly, I don't know what the system will, what the computer system will do, but just take some random samplings and see. Summertime, let's see what people use.
I can tell you, we are one of the very, very few cities that do an average. If you poll the cities around us, none of them do an average. So, but I'll be more than happy to pull any information you guys want.
And it's going to, I mean, I ran, the only numbers I have obviously are my own numbers to run against. And it bounced around month to month, just depending on, it all depended on my actual usage, what it did. So it fit the comments from the last meeting that it, you know, it could go up, it could go down. Mine did one of these, like I said, from month to month, just depending on how it worked, but.
I think since the question has been brought up, now it's piqued my curiosity, so I would like to see something
Well, here's, okay, this is a,
before we move forward.
tonight is a first reading, so we don't necessarily have to have a second reading for this. I mean, obviously, this didn't take effect till what, July? July 1. So, I mean, the rate, I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody wants to leave the rate, the 680 is in place, you know, going forward, whether it was the.
So if we do the first reading tonight, it isn't in effect until we do the second reading? Correct.
This would not be done, we would, what we passed last time, if I understand it correctly, because one of the options was I was just going to veto the last bill, since that was wrong, but we already discussed, okay, how do we wanna handle that, the Scribner error is there regardless, doesn't matter if you agree with the methodology, but we all agreed that that rate was wrong, so that part, one way or another, needs to be corrected, so everybody agrees with that, and we don't necessarily have to do it tonight. And so if we wanted to bring back some information to have a second reading.
I would like to have more information.
Thanks.
I agree.
Gee, David, you could have just done that.
No, I wanted to
You
hear
had
you
to
do
wait
it.
to
I wanted to
argue.
hear you say it. I'm
So-
just giving you the privilege. Yeah.
So, okay, so we will not have a second reading tonight, that'll give time, we can, and when this comes back up for, we could even add it as a discussion beforehand if we wanted to, so we don't have to spend our time
I would like some
discussing it when
information.
we have a reading, that way we can either.
How hard is that to pull, Eric?
It's just a hand calculation, so however many houses you want us to look at, it'll just.
Yeah, you can build a
take
spreadsheet
15
that
or
you
20
can
minutes
just,
per house to do it.
you can build a spreadsheet that you just plug each house in, it's basically, I just plugged each year in mine, so.
And the other option that we have to do, and what we were trying to avoid this year and take up next year, was doing a whole rate study. And that's, and maybe where you're leading is that we do a complete study of the sewer system to see what that rate needs to be and have outside recommendation from an engineer, look at what the numbers should be, if we should charge per 1,000 gallons and how that goes.
I think that would be the wise path to take, because, Mr. Patterson, I think you told us at the last meeting that the water system subsidizes the sewer system to a tune of about $600,000 a year, correct?
Close, 3 to
Okay.
6 depending on the year.
Okay. And then you also shared with us that the increase in the sewer revenue, based on calculating it the new way, would generate around $200,000 a year to the sewer fund.
Correct.
And we need to have that in order to prepare for the new DNR regulations coming down the pike of how we treat the effluent.
Right.
And the upgrades that we'll have to make to our plants in order to accommodate that. If we have, I think it's very important to know that we have the right rate.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to have to raise this rate and then have to raise another rate. I'd rather have the confidence of what the rate needs to be able to accommodate the regulations from DNR, because they're not going to go away.
Correct.
They're only going to become more stringent as the years go by. So I think a rate study is certainly appropriate.
No, we just had first reading tonight on this. We don't need to, I mean,
Don't need to do anything.
yeah, I mean, like I said, the other bill, I had signed it before the meeting, so had I not signed it before the meeting and had objected, I would have vetoed it, but like I said, bouncing it back and forth with Mr. Fairfield and Mr. Welch, we decided, okay, we'll bring it this way, and so I went ahead and signed it, and, so, otherwise, I could have just put it back to square one, but that's, you flip the coin, sometimes you don't get the right reading, so.
Well, I think things happen for a reason, and I'm sorry that the Scrivener's error happened, because we're talking about ordinances and laws, and we should be correct and accurate on those. But however, sometimes things happen for a reason, and I think that this has allowed us to take a step back and to study the issue further and make sure that we're treating our people fairly and that we are doing an accurate assessment of what our rates need to be. So I guess I'm saying I'm glad that it happened.
Well, and as far as the rate study goes, until we know a little more too about the what upgrade we would do and what the cost would be, it'll be, you don't want to, we don't want to arbitrarily set a rate saying, well, we're not gonna do the, we estimate game that was done for years and years. We're not
Right.
doing that anymore. We're going to know what we need to spend before we go playing
I agree.
around with the actual, and when I refer to the rate, it's the $10.45, so.
I agree.
But anyway, okay, everybody's in agreement, we'll have the first reading, so we'll move on, quit beating the dead horse there. Council Bill 28.
Council Bill 28, first reading, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute the First Amendment to Cooperative Agreement by and between the City of Harrisonville, Missouri and the Harrisonville Town Center Transportation Development District.
Okay, due to the issuance or reissuance of these bonds, there had to be a change in the agreement between us and the town center as to when they would be paid. And the best way for it to be paid is in November. There was talk of trying to carry it off into May, but because of the schedule of when the taxes come in, and before we get the property taxes in, it's best if we pay this at the end of November, so we had to redo the agreement with the TDD board. That's what this first ordinance is about. Issuance of these bonds created the necessity to amend the original agreement to adopt the actual practice of how the sales taxes are collected and distributed by the Missouri Department of Revenue. And this will just make it legal, but it's exactly how we want it set up.
Questions? All right,
Make a motion to approve.
this is an ordinance, so we would need a motion to suspend the ruling.
Okay, I missed that motion.
Okay. I have a motion from Alderman Dickerson to suspend the ruling and move Council Bill 28 to a second reading. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second from Alderman Long. Any further discussion? I will need a roll call, please.
Alderman Dickerson,
Aye.
Alderman Long,
Aye.
Alderman Levison,
Aye.
Alderman Bowman,
Aye.
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Reese,
Aye.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Bachman.
Aye.
All right, second reading, please.
Council Bill 28, second reading, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute the First Amendment to Cooperative Agreement by and between the City of Harrisonville, Missouri and the Harrisonville Town Center Transportation Development District.
All right, roll call again, please.
Alderman Long,
Aye.
Alderman Bowman,
Aye.
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Bachman, Alderman Dickerson,
Aye.
Alderman Levison,
Aye.
and Alderman Reese.
Aye.
And Council Bill 28 will become ordinance 03435. Council Bill 29.
Council Bill 29, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of annual appropriation supported tax increment and sales tax refunding revenue bonds, parens Harrisonville Town Center Project, close paren, Series 2018 of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri for the purpose of providing funds to refinance certain reimbursable project costs incurred in connection with the Harrisonville Town Center redevelopment plan, authorizing and approving certain documents in connection with the issuance of said bonds, and authorizing certain other actions in connection with the issuance of said bonds.
All right.
We've been discussing this for a while and brought this to the board where we looked at potential savings from the loan that is still outstanding for the TIF bonds over at Town Center. Where it started out at $8.6 million, it's down to 6.245 and was, at this point, could be callable and could be reissued with a lower tax rate. And the number we looked at was around 12% at that time that we would save. And when you look at these types of issuances, you hope to get maybe 3 to 5%. So at that point, the board was ready to go ahead with it. We went out for bid on a financial advisor. We looked at Piper Jaffray and McLiney and Company. Sam McDonald is here with McLiney and Company. They walked us through this process. I'll let Sam give the details on what we have before you to explain how we're going to refund this and then what the costs are in the future for us.
Absolutely. Well, Mayor, Board of Alderman, thank you for having me. Again, my name is Sam McDonald. I'm Vice President at McLiney and Company. We're a small Missouri-based firm. We're right up in Kansas City. We were founded a little over 50 years ago. It's all family members. We're all related, and we all work together for some Missouri community. So we appreciate the opportunity to come and work with the City of Harrisonville on this refunding transaction. We took this deal to market in what's known as a negotiated sale rather than a competitive sale, meaning that we took it out and we bid it out to multiple different underwriters, particularly because Stifel Nicholas out of St. Louis had a strong desire to buy these bonds at a competitive rate. So we negotiated with Stifel Nicholas. We came in, the city has been paying since 2007 a 4.58% average interest rate. The new rate on this deal is going to be 2.91%. That's a fixed rate. We're not extending the maturity of the bonds. We're not shortening the length of the bonds. Everything is the same, except we're issuing this at a lower par amount than you owe, because we're taking your existing reserve account and we're paying down some of that debt that you owe. And in my conversations with Marcella and with Happy, the city has decided that they can contribute $225,000 towards the refunding. $100,000 of that is to knock down your outstanding principal, and the $125,000, it's actually $680.63, is going to be used to account for accrued interest that you guys currently owe up until the redemption date. The redemption date is going to be May 17th, so basically exactly a month and a day from now, and that's to give the current bondholders time to know, hey, the city's calling this debt back and we're paying it off and issuing new bonds. So, the net effects, what you guys really care about in this. The city's gonna save $1,009,897 over the next 10 years. So currently, Happy, you guys are contributing what, about $150 a year?
Yep, 150, 180,000.
So the savings alone ought to drop, on average, about $100,000 over the life of the issue, that you guys will no longer have to contribute to this debt, assuming that the town center project continues to generate the same level of tax revenues. So we close on April 26th. I will distribute a closing memo in conjunction with Stifel Nicholas. I'd like to just say that through our calls with the Standard & Poor's Rating Company, our due diligence calls with Stifel Nicholas, Happy and Marcella know what's going on with this. You guys are well served with them. I work with quite a few cities across the state, and they know your finances, they represent you well, and I've been very pleased to work with them. Do you guys have any questions about the process going forward, et cetera?
Does this mean that there won't be any $250,000 a year the city contributes to that?
You're still going to have to contribute money based on how the town center is performing
How much is that gonna be
economically.
a year?
But the average over the life of it that you no longer have to contribute is 100. So that's gonna be what, 50 to 85 grand a year that you're
Right,
gonna
instead of
start
150 to 180,000, we're looking at 50 to 80,000. If it would perform better, we wouldn't have to owe anything. We just don't have it. We don't have, it's not generating enough at this point.
That's good.
It's gonna save you money.
And it's general fund money, it's not.
Yeah. So the 225 is a one-time, that's a one-time, that's not the, make sure nobody was confused, that's not gonna be their contribution every year, that's a one-time.
That's a one-time,
Right.
and that's money that currently is on hand in the fund
Right.
dedicated to this.
Okay.
That is gonna be used just so that you owe a little less principal and thereby owing a little less interest going forward.
Right.
It's just a way to it's making an extra contribution on your mortgage payment every month.
I have one other question.
Yes, sir.
Will this free up any money toward the TDD that's on that also? I mean, right now, everything they collect goes to the debt service. Is that gonna continue? Or will they have any money to work with?
They will still be, if the TDD was performing and the TIF up to snuff, it would free up money. But as it is now,
It won't.
it's staying the same.
So just to make sure, I think I understand this, if the city's paying anything, it means it's not performing at the level it should. So that unless the city was not paying the TDD, obviously, the city only pays after the TDD and everybody else has contributed all their money.
That's right.
So as long as we're paying,
Yeah,
the TDD is still not gonna have funds for,
they need money.
yeah, so, okay.
And this is my first time to work with Sam and McLeod and Company. Marcella had worked with them before, found them good to work with. I think they did work on our side, getting us the best deal, and that's why we hired a financial advisor, and that was the way to go. So my thanks to the board for letting us do that.
It'll come from the general fund.
What's the reserve amount that's left in there?
And that 728 is existing reserve account bond proceeds. So that technically is an expense that we have to net out of the savings. So even after spending that almost $750,000, you're gonna come out saving $1 million.
All right. Anybody else have any questions, comments? All right.
Well, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to work for you.
We
Thank you very much.
appreciate all your hard work.
Yes, sir.
It's great news.
Make a motion to suspend the rule and do our thing.
All right, I have a motion from Alderman Dickerson to suspend the ruling and move Council Bill 29 to a second reading. Do I have a second?
I have a second.
Second from Alderman Levison. Any further discussion? I'll need a roll call, please.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Levison.
Aye.
Alderman Reese. Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
And Alderman Bachman.
It's all right. All right, second reading now.
Second reading, Council Bill 29, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of annual appropriation supported tax increment and sales tax refunding revenue bonds per ends Harrisonville Town Center Project, close paren, Series 2018 of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri, for the purpose of providing funds to refinance certain reimbursable project costs incurred in connection with the Harrisonville Town Center redevelopment plan, authorizing and approving certain documents in connection with the issuance of said bonds, and authorizing certain other actions in connection with the issuance of said bonds.
All right, I'll need a roll call again, please.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Bachman. Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Levison.
Aye.
And Alderman Reese.
Aye.
All right, and Council Bill 29 will become ordinance 03436. That is it for our agenda items tonight. Brings us to Alderman and Committee reports. Alderman Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have a couple of items. I wanted to report to you that the VIPs had a successful identikit event on Saturday at Cricket Wireless. I really appreciate Cricket Wireless for hosting us there. Also, the Drug Take Back Day is coming up April 28th. That's a Saturday, 2 weeks from now. That's when we are present in the city from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. to allow citizens to drop off their unwanted or unused or expired drugs, pharmaceuticals, over-the-counter items. We'll be at CVS in the parking lot and also at the police department. So this is a good opportunity for you to empty out your medicine cabinets and protect the safety of your children and your pets, and probably discourage people from breaking into your home to steal your drugs. Also, we have a unique opportunity coming before Cass County on May the 1st. We have a delegation from Nepal who is going to be coming and meeting with elected officials from the county and some of the surrounding municipalities. There's a new municipality that has been birthed out of Kathmandu, Nepal, and the delegation, consisting of their mayor and some others, wishes to come to Cass County to visit with elected officials here to see how local government works in the U.S. So it's a very unique opportunity for us to welcome international delegation to our county, to help them get their government on their feet, to explain to them how local government works here in the U.S. and in Missouri. I've been very honored to work with Congresswoman Vicki Hartzler on this. She's been a huge help in communicating with the U.S. Embassy to make all of this come together. So I'm very honored to be a part of that and look forward to meeting those folks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Bowman, did that get, is it all approved now, or is it still, I mean, will you and I email back and forth, is it, so it's a good, or greenlit, good to go for May 1st, or is it?
As far as we know,
Okay.
everything is subject to change.
Right.
As far as we know,
Okay.
things are on track.
Okay, very good, that's all, thank you. All right, Alderman Bachman.
No.
Alderman Reese.
Yes.
All right.
I've lived in Harrisonville for over 65 years. And that's telling a little bit of something here, but when I was young, and we walked up on the square on Saturday night, and I can look out there and see some smiles that remember the same thing. It was so incredibly busy, and that's where you went to get your nickel ice cream cones, and that's where you went to visit. You didn't use your telephone, you visited up there, and it was a great thing. Our retail was there, our dress stores, our 3 drug stores, a couple of banks. I mean, you know, the whole schmooze was there. And then, of course, other things started to happen. And having lived here for such a long time, I've watched this go up and down and up and down and way far down and getting boarded up, and it was just the saddest thing I've ever seen. Well, this last Saturday, I walked up around the square with my 103-year-old mother, and we went into one of the little stores up here on the corner. And as we looked around the square, it gave me such a good feeling to know it's not there yet, people, but it's getting there. You know, we're starting to grow a little bit. I appreciate that. And I want to especially tell Happy that I appreciate what you are doing in trying to help rebuild the square. And I appreciate all those people that are serving on those committees and going to those meetings to try to make it better. And that's just really what I had to say. I think it's looking better. It's got a long ways to go, but it is looking better, and I appreciate all the help that and all the work you're going to. Anybody who's involved in it. Thank you.
Very good. Alderman Miller.
Just a couple of things. Judy and I had an opportunity last week, like we did last year, to go and visit with one of the Boy Scout troops here in town that meet out at the church. And it never ceases to amaze me. This year it was a younger group that we visited with that are working on a community badge. And the questions that they ask and what's important on their mind for the city. Last year's group, like I said, was an older group, and they had a lot of interesting questions about how the city actually runs. This year's group was a younger group, and let me tell you what, they have a lot of information about
Trash pickup.
trash pickup. They have a lot of information about things that happen at the vault, and there's a lot of kids in town that fight, let me tell you. So it was quite interesting, but they came across with some really good questions and how things work and why things are done the way they're done. So it was a lot of fun. And that's been something fun. And tomorrow morning again, for those of you that are coffee drinkers, Brickhouse up on the square, we'll do a fundraiser for our Right Futures program here in town. So if you don't drink coffee, come get some tea or come get a muffin or come get something. But we'll be there probably till about noon tomorrow. And Brickhouse will give a donation on behalf of Bright Futures for what they make tomorrow. So that's all I got.
Very good. Alderman Dickerson.
Well, I just have one thing. I'm glad we're gonna relook at the sewer. I've had, had a lot of problems last week about, several people have talked to me about it. And so I appreciate Marcy having kind of being on the same page with me on that too.
This is a first.
Ask the question. And
I'm so glad this is on tape.
and I like what he brought out some interesting things.
Absolutely.
And I think that I think the outcome will probably be the same, but at least we are looking at it, and I feel better about it now, that we're going to look into it deeper than we did the last time. That's all I got to say.
Alderman Long.
I just got shop earlier, and we discussed it and talked about this whole deal, so I am glad we are gonna step back and look at it and see and make sure that we're doing the right thing, so that's all I got.
Okay. Alderman Turner? Alderman Leeson?
I just want to thank Mr. Server for coming tonight and speaking to us. We appreciate your wisdom. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Welch?
With us tonight for the board to meet is Roger Crow. He is our community planner. There in the second row. If you have any questions about planning, he is the gentleman that we've brought in to help us along. So we want you all to see him and meet him.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Also, I left a note on my report about Todd Schulte getting hold of us last week, coming back and going back through the report, but he did not send us a list of items to work on yet, so I don't believe the state auditor is coming back this week. So I'm hoping it's next week, maybe the week after. I think they've also gotten busy and probably the flu bugs hit them as well as everybody else, it seems. So as soon as that happens, I'll let you know, and we'll let you know how things turn out.
Very good.
That's it.
All right. Well, welcome back, John. We missed you, but glad to see you back and sitting next to me again. I'm excited about the refi on the TIF. That's great news that we're saving that much money. If you look at the interest rate, I mean, they tell you what is it, if you can save a 40% or 0.5% on your home, that it's a lot of times worthwhile. Well, with the percentage we're saving on that, it's definitely a worthwhile move to do that, so that's good. I don't know if those that do read the paper, there was a question that Mr. Minnick brought to me last week, or last meeting, about the way we did the amendment for our fireworks ordinance that was passed at the last meeting. We have to add it to the agenda to address it, but we're going to put together basically a ratification of that, because it should have had there was one more vote that should have been taken. There was a question brought up. He came up after the meeting, we discussed it, so we'll go back to that to make sure that we want to be sure that it was voted properly and that we're being clear and concise and open. So I think that's important. The sewer ordinance, I'm not one to mince words and hide things. I mean, I'm glad that there's been some talk about this. It means people are actually paying attention for once, which is sometimes difficult to get people to pay attention to what we're doing up here and to ask questions. But bottom line for everybody in town, we have whether it's with this or how we go about it, we're going to have some improvements that need to be made, and that costs money. And we have made an effort since 2015 to not adjust rates unless we absolutely needed it for something. Something will have to occur once like I said, I agree with the rate study, and we'll make sure, we want to be sure we're charging the right amount. I think we did it right with the water treatment plant. We didn't just accept what was there in front of us. We decided to push back a little bit, and we got some more numbers, and we got it right, I think. And I think this is a similar situation. There's been some pushback, and so I think we'll step back and look at this one again. But as far as the improvements are still going to happen, and they have to happen, and so somewhere along the line there will be some adjustment, but we'll try to make sure that it is the right adjustment. Because I'm a big believer in, Mr. Server said it right, you should get what you pay for. You shouldn't pay for something you're not using, and I don't agree with the we're going to estimate it and hope we're right. No, we're going to have solid numbers so we know what we're going after. So I'm glad that the board had a good discussion. Like I said, to hear Marcy and David agree, it was worthwhile tonight. Surprised I didn't pass out of my chair. So anyway,
Mr. Mayor, let me ask a quick question before we depart.
Absolutely.
So did I understand that you're going to come back with a new ordinance regarding the fireworks?
Mr. Fairfield, can you explain how we would, I mean, it's the...
Well, I think you have some choices, but it may have been it may have been passed adequately before, but because there is some apparent confusion, I was not here, about the process, I just recommended that it be added to the docket and the board be given an opportunity to ratify, to make it clear that everybody passed what they thought they were passing.
We had an amendment and. it
So
was-
it'll come back as an ordinance.
yeah, it
It'll
was-
be, come back as a new ordinance that
Yes.
to be voted on again.
Yeah, it was the amendment, there should have been a vote for the amendment
Yes,
before there was a
I
vote
understand that.
before the second reading. And so, like I say, it was brought up after the meeting, we kind of talked about it, and when John told me he was back, we talked about it. We want to be sure that it's clear and what's passed is transparent, we don't want to
I
have any
think that's
questions.
important. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's the professional right thing to
Yep.
do, so.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely, so, all right.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.